The morning of May 23, 1937, breaks without ceremony over the Hudson Valley. At Kykuit, the Rockefeller estate perched above the river in Sleepy Hollow, New York, the household staff moves through their routines with the precision that has governed this place for more than 3 decades. The gardens are immaculate. The stone terraces overlook miles of controlled landscape. The main house, a 6-story Georgian structure of grey stone, stands in its characteristic silence, a monument to order in a world that had long since grown chaotic beyond its gates. But John D. Rockefeller is not here. He is 1,500 miles south, at the Casements, his winter residence in Ormond Beach, Florida. He is 97 years old. His body, which outlasted every prediction made by the physicians who once gave him less than a year to live, has finally begun its surrender. The man who built Standard Oil, who accumulated more wealth than any private citizen in American history, who was once called the most hated man in the country, dies that morning in his sleep. The announcement, when it comes, is measured and dignified. The family releases a brief statement. The newspapers, which had alternately vilified and mythologized him for half a century, scramble to summarize an unsummarizable life. At Kykuit, the news arrives by telephone. The estate, which Rockefeller personally designed as his ultimate refuge from public scrutiny, receives the information with the same quiet that has always defined it. No crowds gather at the gates. No reporters are permitted onto the property. The staff continues its work. The gardens remain undisturbed. This is precisely how John D. Rockefeller would have wanted it. For decades, Kykuit had been more than a residence. It was a statement, perhaps the most elaborate statement of withdrawal ever constructed by an American industrialist. By the time Rockefeller retreated permanently behind its walls, he had already survived congressional investigations, journalistic exposés that compared him to a medieval robber baron, and a federal antitrust case that dismantled his empire. He had watched his name become synonymous with both unprecedented generosity and unprecedented greed. And he had responded, not with public defense, but with silence, with distance, with stone walls and private roads, and a hilltop fortress that overlooked the river, but remained invisible from it. The official narrative of his final years presents a portrait of serene retirement. A devout Baptist who gave dimes to children and millions to universities. A grandfather who played golf and posed for carefully managed photographs. A philanthropist whose foundations reshaped American medicine, education, and science. This version is not false, but it is incomplete. What the official accounts omit is the degree to which Kykuit itself was an instrument of control, a physical manifestation of Rockefeller's lifelong conviction that exposure meant vulnerability. The estate was designed to be approached only through a single, guarded entrance. Its grounds were patrolled. Its views were engineered to ensure that the main house could see outward, but could not be seen from below. Every element of its construction reflected a man who had learned, through decades of bitter experience, that the public gaze was something to be managed, deflected, and ultimately escaped. In the weeks following his death, the family makes arrangements with characteristic efficiency. There will be no public funeral at Kykuit. The burial takes place at Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland, Ohio, near the modest origins that Rockefeller spent his life, both honoring and transcending. The estate in Sleepy Hollow passes to his son, John D. Rockefeller Jr., who has already spent years expanding and refining it according to his own vision. The continuity is seamless. The walls remain. But the questions that Kykuit was built to exclude do not disappear with its founder. They linger in the architecture itself. In the underground art galleries that would later house one of the largest private collections in America. In the coach barn designed to look like a European manor house. In the elaborate gardens that required a permanent staff of dozens to maintain. Every stone, every terrace, every carefully positioned sculpture speaks to a paradox that defined Rockefeller's entire existence: the desire for privacy pursued through the most visible possible means. The man is gone, the estate remains, and the story of how both came to exist begins not on this quiet May morning, but decades earlier, in an era when oil was just beginning to reshape the world, and a young bookkeeper from Cleveland saw before almost anyone else what that reshaping would require. John Davison Rockefeller arrives in Cleveland in 1853, a 14-year-old son of a traveling salesman whose absences were frequent and whose reputation was questionable. His mother, Eliza, is a devout Baptist who instills in him the twin convictions that would govern his entire life: that God rewards discipline and that money, properly managed, is a form of moral stewardship. The young Rockefeller takes these lessons literally. He keeps a small ledger, which he calls Ledger A, in which he records every penny earned and every penny spent. He will maintain this practice for the rest of his life. Control for Rockefeller begins with accounting. He finds work as an assistant bookkeeper at a commission merchant firm. His salary is modest. His ambitions are not. He studies the business with an intensity that his employers find remarkable and slightly unsettling. He does not drink. He does not gamble. He attends Baptist services with unwavering regularity. And he watches. He watches how goods move through the economy. He watches how margins are calculated. He watches how men with capital make decisions and how those decisions multiply or diminish their holdings. By the time he is 20, he has saved enough to enter business for himself. The timing is fortunate. In 1859, Edwin Drake strikes oil in Titusville, Pennsylvania, and the American petroleum industry lurches into existence. The early years are chaotic. Speculators flood into the oil regions. Fortunes are made and lost within months. The price of crude fluctuates wildly. Most observers see disorder. Rockefeller sees opportunity, not in drilling, which he considers too unpredictable, but in refining. The crude must be processed before it can be sold. Whoever controls the refineries controls the bottleneck. In 1863, Rockefeller and a partner invest in a Cleveland refinery. By 1865, it is the largest in the city. By 1870, Rockefeller incorporates the Standard Oil Company of Ohio with a capitalization of $1 million. He is 30 years old. What follows is one of the most rapid and systematic consolidations of economic power in American history. Rockefeller's methods are not subtle, but they are effective. He negotiates secret rebate agreements with the railroads, ensuring that Standard Oil pays less for transportation than its competitors. He acquires rival refineries through a combination of purchase and pressure, offering owners the choice between selling at a fair price or being driven out of business through undercutting. He standardizes every aspect of the refining process, eliminating waste with an obsessiveness that borders on the pathological. He sends agents to monitor competitors. He controls not just refining, but pipelines, tank cars, and eventually the retail distribution of kerosene itself. By 1879, Standard Oil controls approximately 90% of American refining capacity. The company's profits are extraordinary. Its methods are, by the standards of the era, not illegal, but they are becoming visible. And visibility, Rockefeller is beginning to learn, carries costs. The first sustained journalistic attack comes in 1881 when Henry Demarest Lloyd publishes an article in the Atlantic Monthly titled "The Story of a Great Monopoly." Lloyd's prose is vivid. He accuses Standard Oil of corrupting legislatures, crushing competitors, and enriching itself at the expense of consumers. The article is widely read. Rockefeller does not respond publicly. He never will. His strategy, established early and maintained throughout his life, is to let accusations pass unanswered. He believes that silence is dignity, and that the public will eventually lose interest. He is wrong. Throughout the 1880s, the attacks intensify. State legislatures begin investigations. Journalists document the stories of independent refiners who were forced to sell or face ruin. The term trust, the legal mechanism Rockefeller uses to coordinate Standard Oil's holdings across multiple states, becomes a synonym for dangerous concentration of power. In 1890, Congress passes the Sherman Antitrust Act. The law is vague, its enforcement uncertain, but its target is clear. Rockefeller, meanwhile, is becoming something unprecedented in American life, a figure of genuine public hatred. Cartoonists depict him as an octopus, his tentacles wrapped around the Capitol, the courts, the railroads. Ministers denounce him from pulpits. Populist politicians invoke his name as evidence of democracy's corruption. And Rockefeller, who has spent his entire adult life believing that hard work and discipline are rewarded by providence, finds himself cast as a villain in a story he does not recognize. His response is characteristic. He does not argue. He does not explain. He withdraws. In 1884, he moves his family from Cleveland to New York City, where the anonymity of wealth is easier to maintain. He begins spending more time away from the office, delegating daily operations to trusted lieutenants. And he starts looking for land, for a place where the walls can be high enough and the distance great enough that the noise of public condemnation cannot reach him. The search will lead eventually to a hilltop in Sleepy Hollow. But before Kaiquit can rise, the storm must first reach its peak. The storm arrives in 1902, and it wears the face of a 44-year-old journalist from Western Pennsylvania named Ida Minerva Tarbell. She is not the first writer to investigate Standard Oil. She will be the last one who matters. Tarbell's interest in Rockefeller is not abstract. She grew up in the oil regions during the years of Standard Oil's consolidation. Her father, Frank Tarbell, was an independent oil producer who watched his business wither as Rockefeller's system tightened its grip. She remembers the atmosphere of those years, the fear, the whispered conversations, the neighbors who sold out and left. When McClure's magazine commissions her to write a history of Standard Oil, she approaches the assignment with the discipline of a scholar and the memory of a witness. The series begins publication in November 1902 and continues for 2 years. Tarbell's method is meticulous. She obtains internal documents. She interviews former employees. She reconstructs, transaction by transaction, the process by which Standard Oil eliminated its competition. Her prose is restrained, almost legalistic, which makes it more damaging than any polemic. She does not call Rockefeller a criminal. She simply presents the evidence and allows readers to reach their own conclusions. The impact is immediate and lasting. The articles are collected into a book, The History of the Standard Oil Company, published in 1904. It sells widely. It is discussed in Congress. It reshapes public understanding of what a corporation can become when left unchecked. And it fixes Rockefeller permanently in the American imagination as the embodiment of monopolistic greed. Rockefeller reads the articles. His associates urge him to respond, to offer his own account, to defend himself in the court of public opinion. He refuses. He tells one confidant that Tarbell is a misguided woman who does not understand business. He tells another that history will vindicate him. Privately, according to those who knew him, he is wounded in ways he cannot articulate. He has spent his life believing that his methods were not merely effective, but righteous, that the order he imposed on a chaotic industry was a service to the nation. To be cast as a predator rather than a builder is incomprehensible to him. But he does not fight. He retreats further. By this time, Rockefeller has already begun acquiring land in the Hudson Valley. The process starts in the early 1890s, when he purchases a modest estate called Rockwood Hall near Tarrytown. The property offers what he craves: elevation, privacy, and distance from Manhattan. But it is not enough. Over the following years, he quietly buys adjacent parcels, assembling a contiguous holding that will eventually exceed 3,000 acres. The purchases are conducted through intermediaries to avoid inflating prices and to maintain secrecy. Few of the sellers know that John D. Rockefeller is the buyer. The site he selects for his permanent residence is a hilltop known locally as Kaikwit, a Dutch word meaning lookout. The name is apt. From the summit, the views extend for miles in every direction. The Hudson River to the west, the Palisades beyond, the rolling hills of Westchester to the east. It is a commanding position, and Rockefeller intends to command it. Construction begins in 1902, the same year Tarbell's series commences. The timing is coincidental, but symbolically resonant. As the journalist dismantles Rockefeller's reputation in print, the industrialist builds his fortress in stone. The first house, completed in 1906, disappoints him. He finds it insufficiently grand, poorly oriented, uncomfortable. He orders it demolished. A second house rises in its place, designed by the architects Delano and Aldrich, completed in 1913. This version satisfies him. It is solid, symmetrical, and austere, a house that announces permanence without ostentation. But Kaikwit is more than a house. It is a system. The estate includes a coach barn larger than most manor houses, staff quarters for dozens of employees, an underground heating plant, and a network of roads that allow movement across the property without exposure to public view. The gardens, designed over many years with input from the landscape architect William Wells Bosworth, are elaborate but controlled, every vista calculated, every sightline managed. Rockefeller walks these gardens daily when in residence. He inspects. He suggests modifications. He treats the landscape as he once treated his business, as a problem of optimization, of eliminating inefficiency, of imposing order on chaos. The estate also serves a practical function in his long campaign to rehabilitate his image. Beginning in the early 1900s, Rockefeller hires Ivy Ledbetter Lee, a pioneer in the emerging field of public relations. Lee advises him to soften his public persona, to be seen giving money to charity, playing golf, interacting with ordinary citizens. The strategy produces the famous images of Rockefeller handing out dimes to children, smiling benevolently in his golf clothes, appearing as a kindly grandfather rather than a ruthless tycoon. These photographs are distributed widely. They are taken almost exclusively at Kaikwit or at his winter home in Florida. The estate becomes a stage set for a carefully managed performance of harmlessness. Behind the walls, however, the reality is more complex. Rockefeller's health, precarious since his 50s, requires constant management. He suffers from alopecia, which leaves him completely hairless. He wears wigs in public. His digestion is fragile. His diet is restricted. He exercises methodically, not for pleasure, but for maintenance. The man who controlled an industry now struggles to control his own body. And yet he persists. He will live another 2 decades. He will watch his son transform Kaikwit into something grander than he envisioned. And he will never, to the end of his life, understand why the country turned against him. The Supreme Court delivers its verdict on May 15, 1911. Standard Oil of New Jersey, the holding company that controls the vast Rockefeller empire, is found to be in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The corporation must be dissolved. Its component parts, 34 separate companies, must be spun off into independent entities. The decision is unanimous. The language is unambiguous. The most powerful industrial combination in American history is ordered to dismantle itself. Rockefeller receives the news at Kaikwit. He is 71 years old and has been nominally retired from active management for more than a decade. The company's day-to-day operations have long since passed to younger men, but Standard Oil remains his creation, the physical manifestation of his life's work, and its dissolution might reasonably be expected to devastate him. It does not, or if it does, he gives no outward sign. The reason becomes clear in the months that follow. The breakup, intended as punishment, functions instead as multiplication. Rockefeller holds shares in Standard Oil of New Jersey. When the company dissolves, he receives proportional shares in each of the successor companies. And those successor companies, which include the entities that will become Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and Amoco, do not collapse. They thrive. Freed from the legal constraints imposed on the trust, they compete aggressively in a market where demand for petroleum is exploding. The value of Rockefeller's holdings increases dramatically. By some estimates, the Supreme Court decision makes him richer than he was before. This outcome is not lost on the public. The newspapers note the irony. The cartoonists sharpen their pens. But Rockefeller, insulated at Kaikouit, is beyond their reach. He has achieved something that few men in his position ever manage. He has converted his empire into something more durable than control. He has converted it into inheritance. The primary beneficiary of this inheritance is his only son, John Davison Rockefeller Jr., known within the family as Junior. The relationship between father and son is complex, marked by expectation, deference, and an unspoken tension that neither man fully acknowledges. Junior is not his father. He lacks the elder Rockefeller's instinct for competition, his appetite for dominance, his comfort with the harder edges of capitalism. Where the father built, the son administers. Where the father accumulated, the son distributes. The difference is temperamental, but also generational. Junior comes of age in an era when the Rockefeller name is already synonymous with controversy. His burden is not to create wealth, but to justify it. He accepts this burden with a seriousness that borders on the religious. Like his father, Junior is a devout Baptist. Like his father, he believes that wealth carries moral obligations. But where the elder Rockefeller expressed this belief primarily through donations to churches and universities, Junior conceives of philanthropy as a comprehensive project, a systematic effort to reshape American institutions according to principles of efficiency, expertise, and rational planning. He will fund the restoration of colonial Williamsburg. He will donate the land for the United Nations headquarters. He will build Rockefeller Center in the middle of Manhattan. And he will transform Kaikouit from his father's refuge into something more ambitious, a monument to the Rockefeller vision of ordered civilization. The transformation begins even before the elder Rockefeller's death. Junior commissions extensive additions to the estate, including the elaborate gardens that will eventually feature works by Picasso, Calder, and other modern masters. He builds the underground galleries where these works will be displayed. He expands the roads, refines the landscaping, and imports mature trees to accelerate the appearance of established permanence. The scale of the project is extraordinary. The cost is never publicly disclosed. For the elder Rockefeller, watching from his diminishing circle of activity, these changes provoke mixed reactions. He approves of improvement. He approves of investment. But Junior's taste runs toward the artistic in ways that his father's never did. The sculptures that begin appearing in the gardens are abstract, challenging modern, qualities that the elder Rockefeller associates with disorder. He says little. He has spent a lifetime cultivating silence as a strategy, and he does not abandon it now. But those who observe the two men together note a distance that is more than generational. The father built a fortune. The son is trying to build a legacy. They are not the same project. Meanwhile, the world beyond Kaikouit continues to change. The First World War reshapes the global order. The demand for oil accelerates. The companies that emerged from Standard Oil's dissolution grow into multinational giants. The Rockefeller fortune, invested across this expanding industry, grows with it. By the 1920s, John D. Rockefeller is almost certainly the richest man in the world. The precise figure is impossible to calculate. The family's holdings are dispersed across dozens of entities, managed through layers of trusts and foundations designed to minimize taxes and maximize control. What is certain is that the wealth is unprecedented, and that it has become, in some fundamental sense, ungovernable. The Ludlow Massacre occurs on April 20, 1914, in a tent colony in southern Colorado. The victims are striking coal miners and their families, employees of the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, in which the Rockefeller family holds a controlling interest. The Colorado National Guard, called in to suppress the strike, attacks the encampment. Fire spreads through the tents. When the smoke clears, at least 19 people are dead, including 11 children and 2 women who suffocated in a pit they had dug beneath their tent for protection. The national response is immediate and furious. Newspapers publish photographs of the charred remains. Labor organizers invoke the dead as martyrs. Protesters march on the Rockefeller offices in Manhattan. For the first time, the family name is associated not merely with monopoly, but with violence, with the blood of women and children spilled in defense of corporate profits. John D. Rockefeller Sr. is 74 years old when Ludlow occurs. He is largely removed from the company's operations and claims no direct knowledge of the decisions that led to the massacre. This defense is technically accurate and entirely insufficient. The public does not distinguish between ownership and management. The Rockefeller name is on the company. The Rockefeller name will bear the blame. It is Junior, not his father, who must navigate the aftermath. He testifies before Congress. He is questioned aggressively, accused of indifference to the workers' conditions, challenged to account for the deaths. His performance is awkward, defensive, unconvincing. The experience marks him. In the years that follow, he will devote enormous resources to labor relations reform, to worker welfare programs, to reshaping the family's image as enlightened stewards rather than absentee exploiters. The effort is sincere. Whether it is sufficient is a question that admits no easy answer. At Kykwit, the elder Rockefeller maintains his customary silence. He does not speak publicly about Ludlow. He does not apologize. He continues his daily routines, the walks through the gardens, the games of golf, the carefully managed interactions with visitors. If the massacre troubles his conscience, he leaves no record of it. His diaries, his letters, his recorded conversations contain no acknowledgement of the dead. This absence is itself a kind of statement, though what it states remains ambiguous. Denial, perhaps, or compartmentalization, or simply the habits of a lifetime, spent separating business decisions from their human consequences. The 1920s bring a measure of rehabilitation. The war has ended. The economy is booming. The oil companies are thriving. And the Rockefeller philanthropies are beginning to achieve results that even critics must acknowledge. The Rockefeller Foundation funds medical research that leads to breakthroughs in treating hookworm, yellow fever, and malaria. The General Education Board supports schools across the American South. The University of Chicago, heavily endowed by Rockefeller, establishes itself as one of the nation's leading research institutions. The scale of giving is staggering, hundreds of millions of dollars distributed according to principles of systematic improvement. This philanthropy serves multiple purposes. It addresses genuine needs. It reflects genuine beliefs about the obligations of wealth. And it provides a counter-narrative to the story of Standard Oil, a way of reframing the Rockefeller legacy as ultimately beneficial, whatever methods were used to accumulate the fortune. The strategy is deliberate. Ivy Lee and his successors understand that public memory is malleable, that images can be replaced by other images, that a man handing dimes to children can eventually obscure the man who crushed his competitors. At Kykwit, this rehabilitation takes physical form. The estate becomes a venue for carefully orchestrated visits by journalists, dignitaries, and selected members of the public. The gardens are photographed. The views are praised. The elderly Rockefeller, frail but still alert, poses for pictures that emphasize his grandfatherly benevolence. The coverage is generally favorable. The reporters who visit are not inclined to ask uncomfortable questions. They have been chosen precisely because they will not. But the control that defines Kykwit extends beyond public relations. The estate operates according to protocols that govern every aspect of daily life. Staff members are expected to be invisible, efficient, and silent. Visitors are managed with precision. Even family members navigate the property according to established patterns. Junior, despite his growing authority, defers to his father in matters concerning the house and grounds. The patriarch remains the patriarch, even in decline, and decline is now unmistakable. By the late 1920s, Rockefeller's world has contracted to a narrow circuit. Kaikwit in the warmer months, Florida in the winter, the golf course, the gardens, the daily drives through the estate. His hearing fades, his energy diminishes. He relies increasingly on attendance for basic tasks. Yet he persists, sustained by the same discipline that built his empire, the conviction that routine, properly maintained, can hold dissolution at bay. The stock market collapses in October 1929. The American economy enters a contraction that will last a decade and reshape the nation's relationship with wealth, with government, with the very idea of capitalism itself. Breadlines form in cities, banks fail by the thousands, unemployment reaches levels that would have seemed inconceivable a year earlier. The suffering is vast and indiscriminate, touching families that had considered themselves secure. At Kaikwit, the depression registers as an abstraction. The Rockefeller fortune, diversified across oil companies, real estate, bonds, and other holdings, declines in value but does not disappear. The family remains, by any reasonable measure, among the wealthiest in the world. The staff continues its routines. The gardens are maintained. The walls stand. If John D. Rockefeller, now 90 years old, perceives any irony in his insulation from a catastrophe that has impoverished millions, he does not record it. His son, however, understands that the moment demands a response. Junior announces a series of high-profile projects designed to demonstrate confidence in the economy and provide employment for workers who desperately need it. The most ambitious is Rockefeller Center, a complex of 19 commercial buildings in Midtown Manhattan that will take nearly a decade to complete. The project is risky. Critics question whether anyone will lease office space during a depression, but Junior proceeds. The construction employs thousands. The symbolism is unmistakable. While others retreat, the Rockefellers build. This is the family's public face during the 1930s, active, engaged, visibly contributing to recovery. The philanthropies continue their work. The foundations fund relief efforts. Junior appears at groundbreakings and dedications, representing a version of capitalism that claims to serve the common good. Whether this representation is accurate is a matter of perspective. What is certain is that it contrasts sharply with the elder Rockefeller's withdrawal into silence and seclusion. The patriarch's world has narrowed further still. By the early 1930s, he rarely leaves his immediate surroundings. His days follow patterns established decades earlier. Breakfast at a fixed hour, a drive through the grounds, correspondence managed by secretaries, golf when weather permits. He receives visitors, but the visits are brief and carefully controlled. Conversations are limited to approved topics. Anything that might agitate or distress is filtered out before it reaches him. This filtering extends to news of the outside world. The Depression, the rise of fascism in Europe, the growing tensions that will eventually produce another world war. These developments reach Rockefeller, if at all, in sanitized form. His attendants and family members have concluded that protecting his tranquility is more important than keeping him informed. He is, in effect, preserved, maintained in a state of managed ignorance that mirrors the managed visibility of his earlier years. The estate itself has become a kind of museum, though one still inhabited by its subject. The rooms reflect choices made decades ago. The furniture, the artwork, the arrangement of objects, all remain as Rockefeller established them. Junior has made his additions to the grounds, but the main house belongs to the father. It is a space suspended in time, a physical record of preferences and priorities that no longer change because the man who held them no longer changes. Visitors who encounter Rockefeller during these final years describe a figure who seems both present and absent. He recognizes faces. He follows conversations. He occasionally offers observations that reveal the sharp intelligence still operating beneath the surface. But he also drifts. He repeats stories. He loses threads. The man who once held the details of a continental business empire in his mind now struggles to recall what he ate for breakfast. His religious faith, however, remains constant. He continues to read scripture. He continues to pray. He continues to believe, as he has believed since childhood, that his life has unfolded according to divine plan, that the wealth he accumulated was not seized, but granted, not hoarded, but stewarded. This conviction insulates him from doubt. It permits him to review his legacy without remorse. Whatever others may say about Standard Oil, about the competitors destroyed, about the workers killed at Ludlow, Rockefeller meets his God with a clear conscience. The clarity may be genuine. It may also be the final achievement of a lifetime spent controlling the narrative. By 1937, the end is unmistakably approaching. Rockefeller spends his last winter in Florida, at the casements, where the climate is gentler and the routines can continue with minimal adjustment. His body fails incrementally. His appetite diminishes. His sleep grows longer and less restorative. The family gathers, not in crisis, but in anticipation. They have been preparing for this moment for years. The succession is arranged. The trusts are in place. The fortune will pass smoothly to the next generation. Nothing has been left to chance. Control, maintained to the end, extends even to the management of death. The morning of May 23, 1937, arrives without urgency. John D. Rockefeller dies in his sleep at the casements, his breathing simply stopping some time before dawn. The attendants discover him when they come to begin the day's routines. His face, according to those who saw it, is peaceful. The struggle, if there was one, left no visible trace. The news travels quickly. Newspapers across the country publish obituaries that have been prepared for years, updated periodically as the anticipated death repeatedly failed to arrive. The assessments vary. Some emphasize the philanthropy, the universities endowed, the diseases conquered through Rockefeller-funded research. Others revisit Standard Oil, the trust, the congressional investigations, the families ruined by competitive practices that were legal but merciless. The man contained multitudes. The obituaries reflect them. At Kaikouit, the household receives the news and continues. This is what the estate was designed to do, to persist beyond any individual, to embody permanence in a world of flux. Junior assumes full authority over the property he has already been managing for decades. The transition is seamless. The gardens do not pause. The staff does not disperse. The walls remain. The funeral is private, held in Cleveland, where Rockefeller began. The burial places him near his mother, near the modest origins he never forgot, even as he transcended them. No crowds gather. No protests disturb the ceremony. The man who was once burned in effigy, whose name was synonymous with everything dangerous about concentrated wealth, is laid to rest without incident. Time has dulled the outrage. Or perhaps the outrage has simply found other targets. Kaikouit enters its next chapter. Junior continues the expansion and refinement his father tolerated but never fully embraced. The gardens acquire more sculptures. The underground galleries fill with art that would have puzzled the patriarch. The estate becomes gradually less a refuge than a showcase, a demonstration of what enlightened wealth can create when guided by aesthetic vision and institutional ambition. 4 generations of Rockefellers will eventually call Kaikouit home. Each will modify it according to their needs. Each will inherit not just the property, but the questions it embodies. The fortune disperses across descendants, foundations, trusts. The name persists, attached now to plazas and universities and charitable initiatives that span the globe. Whether this persistence constitutes redemption is not a question the estate answers. Kaikouit offers no judgments. It simply endures. In 1979, the family donates the property to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. The house and gardens open to public tours. Visitors walk the paths that Rockefeller once walked alone. They admire the views he engineered for his private contemplation. They peer into rooms where decisions were made that shaped industries and sometimes destroyed lives. The estate that was built to exclude the public gaze now operates entirely for it. The hilltop remains. The river below continues its patient course toward the sea. The name Kaikwit still means what it always meant: lookout, a place of watching. What it watches now is only the passage of seasons across a landscape that no longer belongs to anyone. The man who built it sought control. What he achieved was something more ambiguous, a monument that outlasted its purpose, beautiful and silent, keeping vigil over a world that has long since moved on.